already this morning has invited me on my drive here. You're talking about nature. And I went through Wycombe instead of going down 413. So I see more foliage and just the crimson red leaves and just all of it. And my heart is very full this morning. And I'm so grateful to be here with all of you. And some of my dear friends couldn't be here today. And I said, no, well, that's fine. Heard it all. Anything I have to share. But I, again, trust. I'm trusting the process. I'm trusting that everyone that is here physically and virtually is meant to be here today. And I am extremely grateful to be here with you all. And what a privilege it is to stand here and share just a little piece of myself with you this morning. Hello, Gary. I wanted to talk with you today about something that's been alive in my heart lately, and it's trust. Trusting in the process of life. Trusting in the process of life. Trusting that even when everything looks uncertain, everything, something greater is still at work. And I say that not as a theory, but as something I've had to live. And, we are living in a time of uncertainty now. Well, we're always living in a time of uncertainty, correct? But it feels a little more, a little stronger today where we go. I don't know what's happening like in our country, in our world, within ourselves. Everything seems to be not necessarily in ourselves, but when we look outside and we listen to different things, there's a lot of chaos. It feels like it's a very chaotic time for us. And of course, even that, I believe all of that has a purpose. All of this has a purpose. And actually, it's a gift because it's stirring things up. And the dark has to be seen. We've talked about that so many times at Circle. And anything hidden gives it power. The first time I heard that was from a woman who was sexually abused by her father for years. And she said, and that's what she came to, anything that's hidden gives it power because she kept it quiet. And it empowered, it gave it power. And so that really stayed with me. So all that's surfacing now, the good, the bad, the ugly, what's really bad, but it's what our perception is, right? It's all asking to be witnessed. And as we see what's happening out there, we are also invited to look within. And I have been invited to look within. In my life, I've always been a bit of a Pollyanna. I would tend to see the good in everything and things. And basically, I love peace and harmony. And I've chosen to live in that energy. And I've also learned that sometimes that desire for peace has a cost. It has kept me and can keep me from being fully authentic from saying what's really, really true for me. I used to think that peace, keeping peace meant keeping things together, keeping things together. But sometimes it meant keeping myself small. But I was willing to do that as long as everybody was happy. You know, growing up in my house, and then, you know, through most of my adult life too. And then, but I got a wake-up call, which about 35 years ago, and some of you know of this, but I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And I remember at the time I was in a small group book study called, and we were studying the book Awareness by Anthony DeMille. So that was an invitation right there for me to go, I wonder. And I'm saying, why? I wonder what's different about me. Because it didn't run in my family. I'm the youngest of 5 girls, and it wasn't there before. So I did some inquiring. And yet, you know, there it was, even though it's like it wasn't there before, but I guess I'm pretty special. Because yeah, isn't that a weird thing to say? But so I did ask. I said, show me, what is this about for me? And the answer didn't come from a doctor. It came from that deep place within, like a whisper from the divine. It said, Susan, you've been living with fear, from fear. You've been living from fear. And it was like, okay. Fear of conflict, fear of disapproval, fear of not being enough. And I began to see how often I operated from that place. How people pleasing had become a way to avoid what? To avoid discomfort. And it's kind of crazy when you think, well, if everyone else is happy around me, then I'm okay. And what I learned through this was, well, not really, Susan. Not really. And then beneath that, I found anger. So I asked, what was this anger about? I got an answer. And that surprised me because, I mean, I guess I have more of a quiet anger. I'm not a volatile person. I'm not a screamer. So I would think growing up in a home with my father was that every night, every day. I didn't identify that I held that in me. And then to my surprise, I found resentment. And I was like, whoa, that is like a sludge. Really? And like I said, and that felt even harder to face, to see. And you don't need to hear what I uncovered from that, but you know, I think you got it just from the beginning. But the whisper was clear. Susan, something in you wants to change. Something in you wants to change. So I began to change. Little by little. I started to let go of fear of driving on highways in Atlanta. I was living there at the time, of doing things alone, of speaking up. And as I let go, I began to trust myself more, and trust life. One of the brave things I did, I will say, so I saw an oncologist, I had a mastectomy, saw an oncologist, and so he talked about how many treatments I would need of chemotherapy. It was always my choice. There, I said, this is your choice. I never heard that before from anyone about this particular thing. And so I did. And one day I woke up in the middle of the treatments. You know, it was the middle of the 8 treatments. And I said, I'm tired of being sick and I want to live. I want to start to live the first time in my life. For the first time. So I met with the oncologist and I told him, I had a long speech that I put together in my head. And then when he came in, he said, so what's up? I said, I quit. And he said, and he sat down, he said, okay. He said, well, you know, Susan, it's taken a lot of courage to do what you've done. I never heard that I was courageous before, because I'd been pretty sick through this all throughout. He says, but you know, we just don't know. It's all a crapshoot. He said, next month, they might change how many or if or what. And I felt empowered. And that was the first God's story. I'm not the first. The fact that he was put into my life, because I wasn't planning on going to him as the oncologist, and somebody stepped in and said, I'd like you to consider him. I walked out of there, and if anybody saw Mary Tyler Moore show, and she would walk and she'd throw up her hat. That's how I felt. It was like, oh, I'm free. I am starting to live. Because it's the first time I did what I wanted to do. And it's not pursue, it's, hey, let's celebrate this, right? So I wasn't going to share that, but anyway, felt necessary. So so that story is complete. And here I am, 35 years later, and grateful to be here. And then a couple of years ago, I entered another deep lesson in trust. It came during a time that everything was unraveling, both in my outer and in my inner world. There were changes happening in my spiritual community. And at the same time, my husband, my partner of 57 years, was in the hospital. It felt as though the ground beneath me was shifting. So much that I loved and devoted myself to was unraveling. It was changing, and I couldn't understand why it was all happening at once. I remember saying to the divine, whoa, why now? Why all at once? And the quiet answer came, Susan, it's time to choose yourself, to practice self-love and self-care. Okay. So I stepped back for a while. And in that space, I experienced a deep letting go of roles, of identities, the way I thought things should look like. It was painful, yes. But it also became sacred, a sacred time. a time to heal, a time to rest and to listen more deeply. Because in truth, I was holding two losses, my husband and my community. So I had lots of space now, more free time. So through meditation, silence, and more quiet time, opening to the new. This is new for me. This is all new for me to be like alone, even though I know I'm not alone. And so I began to feel an expansion, an expansion taking place inside myself, a shift. And I began to sense that I wasn't being punished. I was being guided. Even in the loss, divine order was at work, teaching me to trust again in a new, deeper way. A new, deeper way. Of course, if I'm willing, that's always the question, and I was. So one day I woke up and it was like everything shifted. It was, I don't know, everything felt new, everything felt lighter. It's like, all right, this is okay. So in time, I returned to the community, to my community, but from a different place this time. I returned simply to be love, to be peace, and to be true. And I realized that all of it, the misunderstanding, the loss, the loneliness, had been a part of my unfolding. Divine order was moving through it all. Even when I couldn't see it. And that's okay. We are where we are until we're not, right? And again, I wasn't being punished. I was being polished. I was being polished. So I want you to know I'm not advocating doing a spiritual bypass in the midst of these life challenges, because I had to be in them and with them. And yes, feel the pain. And sometimes the despair. Sometimes the despair. The despair of what? The despair. And it's all necessary until it isn't. So that's kind of neat. It's here until, and it's necessary until it isn't. So that's hope, right? So when I'm ready and when I'm willing to choose trust, I am saying, I will walk with life, not against it. And that is when peace that lives in me, that is me, is felt, experienced once again. So if you find yourself in uncertainty right now, and the world feels chaotic and or your personal life feels uncertain, may this be a reminder. Nothing is wasted. Even the pain has a purpose. Even the endings carry seeds of new beginnings. And the same divine intelligence that spins the galaxy is moving through your life, through our lives, through our heartbreaks, our challenges, and our choices. So I invite us, because we're a community, right? We're a team here, to trust that we are exactly where we need to be, and to trust that we are being guided. Sometimes it takes a little patience because we want the answer like this, but just to trust that we are being guided, because all of it, every bit of it, is in divine order. And my prayer is that I have the courage, and I invite you to join me, to walk through the unknown with an open heart. To walk through the unknown with an open heart, and to keep choosing love, even when it's hard. And to remember that you are, and I am, never, ever alone. Because life is for me, always. Thank you.